Today, we'll dive into the inspiring journey of Lily Kanter, a mom of three and a serial entrepreneur with over 35 years of experience in tech and business. She's the co-founder of Serena and Lily, founder of Boone Supply, and most recently, the visionary behind Avery Lilly. Her journey is filled with valuable lessons on perseverance, reinvention, and the art of handling life's challenges with grace. Let's explore how Lily has built not just successful companies, but a legacy of giving back. Lily, welcome to Momshine.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for coming on the show. Your reputation precedes you. And I want to give our listeners a little bit of the quick intro, the background. Tell me about your experience in tech. You worked at Microsoft and Deloitte. So tell our listeners what that was like.
Well, I actually started my career as a CPA, and I very quickly got very bored. But I did become a controller for a startup company, which was one of my clients at Touche Ross. And by doing that, I actually jumped the aisle into technology because I implemented all of the tech for the company I was the controller for, which allowed me to learn technology, which over about a 5.5-year period, I learned systems integration. And I went back to Deloitte and Touche on the technology integration side and consulting. And then I got recruited to Microsoft in 1994 as they were scaling the enterprise. And it was an incredible time to go to Microsoft. We were just launching Windows 95, and it was just an awesome place.
Incredible. And you did incredible things there, from launching their first retail store that won Bill Gates Chairman of the Year that year. You also launched a program helping inner city youth get certified to work in the store, which was incredible. So it sounds like your career path was paved with a lot of hands-on passion projects.
Absolutely. I think that I was probably born with this crazy entrepreneurial gene that was pulsing through my veins at all times, because anywhere I went, I was innovating and talking some senior leader into the funding. And in this case, I was running the Western United States for Microsoft for their retail vertical, which meant we were calling on the largest retail companies that had 2,000 desktops or greater, companies like Starbucks, like Albertsons, all of the Western U.S. retailers. And that landed me at Sony Development Company down in Los Angeles. They were building the Metreon here in San Francisco, and they said, let's do a Microsoft store. Keep in mind, this is before Apple even had their first store.
Yeah.
So I ran it up the flagpole at Microsoft, and I was able to actually raise $8 million from Bill Gates and Steve Ballmer at the time.
Wow.
To open the very first Microsoft retail experience store in the Metreon, which is why I came to San Francisco in 1998 to do that project. As I got into that store, one of the development goals of Metreon was to hire the inner city youth that were in South of Market. That was one of the stipulations of the development project. And so as these youth began to work for us, I realized they had the most incredible PC skills. They could run circles around me.
Wow.
So I felt like, why are they not working in tech?
Yeah.
And the answer was they didn't have degrees and they didn't have certifications. So I felt like there was an opportunity to help them out and get them certified.
Incredible.
Yeah.
That's incredible stuff. And you're operating like an entrepreneur, raising money within businesses. So why the leap? How did you go from this amazing job at technology companies to, let's segue, launching Mill Valley Baby and Kids and your own thing? Were there any fears you had going from being a leader in tech to starting something brand new on your own?
Well, it's funny you asked that question. So I left the corporate world. I left Microsoft in 2000 when I was pregnant with my very first child. And keep in mind, I was traveling all over the Western U.S. So I was on a plane 3 or 4 times a week, covering the Western U.S., and I was pregnant with our first child. and I really didn't want to continue to get on planes.
Yep.
And I was 36 years old at the time, and I did not want to lose the baby. And I had had a few miscarriages at this time. And so I decided to off-ramp. And I had my very first baby, and what I wanted in my nursery, I found a hard time finding. So when the baby turned 1 year old, I opened up Mill Valley Baby and Kids. And I think people honestly thought I had lost my mind because I went from this big job at Microsoft to owning a baby and kids store in downtown Mill Valley. I literally strolled the baby to work, and I put him in a crib, and I just helped customers, and I built an amazing baby and kids store.
Amazing. I love this story. And you were honoring decisions that you felt were needed as a mom. That's amazing for a lot of moms on the line to hear because it worked out great. So what corporate skills and mindset did you take with you from the technology world, and what did you leave behind?
Well, I definitely took the go big or go home mentality because I don't think I went into Mill Valley Baby and Kids ever thinking I was just doing a store. I, went into it with an expansive view. And I would say, what did I leave behind? I left behind being on someone else's schedule and having to go to corporate offsites. The idea of having to do meetings after meetings, I was just honestly over with. So I left behind being on someone else's schedule and being able to balance work life in the way that I wanted to.
I love this so much. I relate to it so much, going from Zoom calls to actually having control of the schedule so you can do all the things that matter, include growing a business at your own pace and your own rate. So Serena Dugan walked into your store, and that was the impetus to what turned out to be Serena and Lily from a baby-oriented home furnishing store. So tell our listeners how that happened.
Well, it's a hilarious story because Serena actually walked into Mill Valley Baby the day I was giving birth to baby number 2. And she left her portfolio at the store knowing that I had a very high-end clientele. She was a decorative painter at the time, and she was also dabbling in textile design. And she was also dabbling in artwork. And so I was at the hospital. I brought the baby in for show and tell. He was 20 hours old because I was waiting for my other baby to get into a nap before I brought a brand new baby home. And so I was doing show and tell, and my manager said, this woman stopped by yesterday. Here's her portfolio. And I opened it, and I was like, oh, my God, this is gorgeous. I picked up the phone. I called Serena, and I said, your portfolio is gorgeous. And she's like, hold on a second. Are you the woman that just had the baby yesterday? And I was like, yeah, yeah, he's fine. When are we meeting? So, that's that crazy innovation gene. Don't even know why I called her. Just thought her stuff was gorgeous.
That's the drive.
It was just the drive. And we met. We met up about a week later. She took me through 3 portfolios that day. She took me through her decorative painting portfolio. I said, your work's gorgeous. Why don't you paint that entire wall of the store? We'll do baby girl's room, baby boy's room, kids boy room, kids girl room. I'll put your cards out. We can do a rev share. And then she's like, okay, why don't we do that? And then she opened up her next portfolio, which was kids artwork. She was painting kids artwork. And I said,
wow,
I love it. I have a kids artwork business. I actually sell to 70 other independent specialty. I need girls artwork. Do you want to do girls art? Oh, sure. I'd love to do girls art. Okay, we're doing that together. And now we're in like hour 2 and she's showing me her textile designs. And I said, oh, I love your textile designs. I can see it on a baby bumper. And she's like, come to think of it, what I would want in my nursery doesn't exist. And I said, do you have a vision for that? And she's like, I do. I go, well, bring it to me. So now we're have started 3 different initiatives together. And she walks out of the store and she called her husband at the time and said, I think something really big just happened.
Wow. I love that. And I think the interpersonal dynamics and just trusting your gut. So it can be crippling to a business when it doesn't work out and you don't mesh or you get excited and maybe personalities can conflict. So how did you know she was the right business partner? What do you look for in a partnership that you were like, this is going to be a great partner for me? Or was it simply just simple? It was like, I loved her work and we had a good synergy together.
Well, I think at the end of the day, relationships are about chemistry.
Yeah.
So I feel like I'm very intuitive around chemistry, and I can pick up on the subtleties of chemistry pretty quickly with people. So either like, I'm feeling a sense of serious chemistry or I'm not pretty quickly, just like if you're dating someone, it's the same thing. But there was definitely an instant kind of kismet chemistry between the two of us. And she obviously had a very complementary skill to me. She's a designer. She's a creative. I'm more of a, business person with, I have a lot of enthusiasm around home decor, but I'm not the designer.
Right.
So it was just very symbiotic. And I feel like the most important thing as it relates to partnerships is really clear domain ownership.
Yeah.
And not being on top of each other in any sense, like being very clear and respectful to one another's superpowers. And I think that's what made us a great partnership. Serena and I always said, Serena and Lily, there would never be Serena and Lily without Serena, and there would never be Serena and Lily without Lily. And that's what made that partnership work.
Well, I love how you put that and how figuring out a business partner's domain is so important when launching a business. What are they going to own? What are you going to own so that you can find the right complements to your own strengths to really take something to the next level? I mean, it's like other things in life.
I feel like having domains, even in a marriage, is important for the relationship. It will eliminate all the pettiness around whatever it is. And especially if you're doing a remodel with your husband or your partner, I think it's just so important to have domains. And I found that with Serena and I, there was never a lack of clarity around who owned what decision. And so I felt like that is what made the relationship so successful.
I mean, I think that's when it works really well in companies. It probably even works well with kids when they know what they're responsible for, what each team is responsible for, and party just makes things a lot more clear.
Yes, absolutely.
And holds everybody accountable to their part and able to thrive at what they're good at.
Yes. I think understanding superpowers and understanding what you're not good at is really important in life. And I used to do it a lot with our team members and have people be very vulnerable. Here's what you can count on me for. Please don't count on me for these things because I suck.
I love that. It's true. And I think it's like the hardest thing in life. I tell my kids that when they get a bad grade or they get a bad score, these are meant to be practiced so you know what you need to work on. We're not meant to be perfect humans. No. We're not meant to have all the pieces figured out. And when women, I think, can be vulnerable and admit that, especially at a leadership level, it opens the floodgates to other women to feel like it's okay.
It's okay.
It's okay to not be perfect.
100%.
Every week is different. So I think a lot of our listeners might not know that Serena and Lily was sold in 2016. Tell me about that decision and how you and Serena came to that choice together. You built a great partnership. How did you know? I think it's important as women, too, to know when it's okay to pivot, when it's okay to move on from something.
Well, we actually did a majority control investment in 2014. It was at a time where I really needed to clean up our cap chart. We had not aligned capital on our cap chart.
For our listeners, what is a cap chart?
Oh, sorry.
For us learning about numbers.
In our investment capital stack, in terms of who the money we took from outside investors, we took early money from a venture capitalist on Sand Hill Road, which felt really exciting at the time. I don't recommend anyone do that who's building a consumer brand. It is not aligned capital. They are investing in software as a service. They're investing in tech companies. There's not a lot of inventory in those businesses, so they can grow them very fast. You try to put a lot of growth onto a retail venture that has a lot of inventory, and all you're doing is raising money once a year because you're trying to fund the inventory with
supply.
capital.
Yeah. You have to carry a tremendous amount of supply.
Yes. In order to grow fast, you need to get in front of it, and you have to, some of this inventory coming from India would take, 6 months. So you'd have to get way out in front of it from a lead time. And I don't recommend venture money for a consumer brand that has working capital inventory. So we really needed to clean up our cap chart, our investors. And so we brought in a majority investor that bought out whoever wanted to leave at that time.
I see.
And so Serena and I stayed in. And I stayed in for a couple more years to the point where I felt like it was time for the company to have a different type of leadership. I was the CEO for 12 years. And to be honest, I was a bit burned out. We had run a marathon, but at a sprint pace. And I felt like it was time to bring the company a new high energy to take it to the next step.
And with 3 babies, did you have?
I had 3 babies.
And so how did you juggle mom life while being a CEO?
A lot of staffing.
Yeah.
I'm not going to lie about that. I really had an incredible husband who was boots on the ground at the house, really looking after those children. I had an incredible nanny who has been in our life since the children were born. She's still in our life today. And it's just important to build a village around you and in a way that honors it takes a village. And consistency was one of my things that I wanted for my kids. I wanted them to have the same person their whole lives. And then I even brought in more people around Gladys, our dear Gladys. And it just, it built a lot of, I think, stability for my children.
Yeah. To be able to do what you were able to do and ensure your kids' needs were taken care of while building something so great, I think is amazing for other moms to hear.
Yeah.
Ask for help, get help, and build the right village around you.
Absolutely.
So you did something when the dust settled with Serena and Lily, right? You started something different.
Yes.
This is around 2016.
I actually left Serena and Lily in 2016. I took a year off and I decompressed.
Good.
And hung out with the kids and did a lot with them. And then I got the opportunity to buy a school fundraising company. I was really intrigued by the RED movement model. They raised $220 million for the Global Fund for AIDS with their relationships with the Gap and American Express and Apple. And a friend of mine who I met in a fellowship was one of the co-founders and president of the RED movement. And I thought, how can you build a democratized commerce engine that gave back? Because I had gotten involved starting in 2000 when I left Microsoft. I started to get really involved in the nonprofit world.
Yeah.
And
I want to talk about that. I have moms that swear by working at nonprofits and being a part of nonprofits. I think it is so important. And an important part of your background.
Yeah.
Because there's always been that thread of giving back.
Yeah, I'm just very inspired by people that are changing the trajectory of other human lives. That's been I've been exposed to some incredible entrepreneurs, social entrepreneurs, that are taking people off of trash dumps, children, and putting them through world-class education. And some of them have PhDs today, working in London off of a Cambodia, trash dump. So I feel like these social entrepreneurs are really, I have so much respect for.
Yeah.
And so I try to support their work as much as I can. And there's just some really special people doing special work. But when I left and started this, I bought the assets of a school fundraising company that was in 7,500 schools. and we digitized the business. It was on paper forms, just like Girl Scout cookies have paper forms.
Right.
This business had paper forms. So we digitized the business. We basically built GoFundMe on top of Shopify and rolled it out. It was enormously successful. We raised $104 million for schools using eco, waste-free lunch, waste-free kitchen. And sadly, COVID hit, and all the schools and all the team sports that were using our platform just, like if you see our Shopify stats in March of 2020, it looks like the patient died, you know.
Right.
It just like it was going up, like, and then boom, and it just stayed down the rest of 2020. And then 2021 was really, we kept the lights on, but at some point it was time to let go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that that's an important point too, is knowing, again, when to pivot, when it's valuable. I mean, I still think a platform like that is valuable long term. It just was a matter of timing, which sometimes is not on your side.
Yeah. It was honestly a very tough business model. I think it's a brilliant nonprofit model.
Totally. And what is the difference for Moms on the Line between the nonprofit versus corporate models? Like, what would you say are the biggest differences?
Well, probably fundraising, ability to fundraise. So you need something really commercially viable to raise money from investors that are trying to get a return on their investment. And that model did not prove out to be enough of a commercially viable model to continue to raise money against it. Right. It just didn't have the financial fundamentals because we were giving back 40% of the revenue back to the schools. I even had some investors tell me, why don't you just convert this into a nonprofit? Because it just was not a commercially viable business. Mm-hmm. And from but the beauty of being a for-profit business is the availability of capital. There are less than 200 nonprofits in the world that have greater than a $50 million annual budget. So, you know, you don't get a unicorn out of these type of nonprofits because the capital availability is not there. A lot of people are arguing right now that the next set of unicorns are going to be positive impact companies, which is an exciting idea to think that there's capital availability to also have positive impact on the world and positive commercial value.
I've been seeing that. Yeah. They say in times of lull or economic kind of instability, whatever you want to call it, those are when the best startups get born. And I have seen more people come up with startups in that realm, which excites me.
It's really exciting. I feel like our climate crisis is bringing on a lot of innovation. There's tremendous innovation happening in the wellness and healthcare space. I mean, you've got drone companies like Zipline that are, delivering drugs throughout Rwanda. Right. You've got all these amazing impact-oriented for-profits that are raising a lot of capital, and it's kind of double, triple bottom line businesses. It's a very exciting world.
Well, and I can see how passionate you are. So how did you teach your boys philanthropic values? Like, how can we teach our kids how important it is to give back?
Well, I think everything in parenting is about modeling. I don't think they're listening. I think they're watching.
Yeah.
And, as a family, every year we would go somewhere and roll up our sleeves and build a school. Like, we went to India and built a school. We went to Kenya and built a school. We went to Ecuador in the Amazon and built a school.
It's incredible as a family. How did you investigate for Moms on the Line? Like, are there accessible give back programs that also involve travel? Because I love that. Our show on travel does very well. So how did you investigate how to even pull that off as a family?
We got very involved in a nonprofit that was originally called Free the Children, and then they became the We Org. Unfortunately, they got crushed during COVID. Their entire all their travel experiences, because they had a lot of youth programming, and then they had these big We Day events, and super sad. But I do believe they're rebuilding right now. And I know one of the co-founders is rebuilding this travel component for families.
Incredible.
Yeah. So I think there's availability and something we could definitely put out on your website if you want a resource guide on this.
Yes.
And but yeah, I've gotten my kids very involved in the work, the social entrepreneur in Cambodia. We just built a bouldering wall. My boys are big bouldering rock climbers.
Yep. And
they're now 19, 21, and 23. But my middle son and my youngest son are really into rock climbing.
Yeah.
So I asked our son in the middle if he would go and build this bouldering gym at Cambodia Children's Fund, and he spent a month there, and he's going back there
So
next
I
week.
think for other moms on the line, finding your kids' passion and joy and seeing how they can give that back to other people that might not have their passion is a good way to connect it and make it really valuable to them.
Yeah. I felt like they would stay involved in the org if it was something they were super passionate about and also really involved with.
Yeah.
So there was a little bit of that strategy, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
But honestly, it worked, and it's amazing. We have this family project now.
I love that. I'm going to think about that with my family and how we can apply more of it. Every year we definitely try to dedicate something to giving back, but there's more I think all of us could do there. Okay, so I want to segue to your Hawaii-based design company now, Avery Lily. I've been on the website. I love it. My husband needs the bath towels. And it really invests in the aloha spirit because every element gives back to Hawaii. So tell our listeners about what you're doing now. How can we support the business? And I just love it.
Oh, thank you. So it was born out of a time that I was fortunate to kind of go to Hawaii during COVID. My kids went to school at Hawaii Preparatory Academy on the Big Island. I met this fabulous woman, Avery, who had done the design of the home we were living in. And we met, and again, wonderful chemistry. I did spend about a year with her doing a few things inside the home. And I could tell she was quite ready to go and do her own thing. And she just didn't want to do it on her own. She didn't feel like she had the business chops, nor the investment to really put behind it. And I said, I'll help you do it. One of the things I realized having kids going to school at Hawaii Preparatory is the kids would leave these schools and they'd go to the mainland, they'd go to university, they wouldn't come back to the islands because there was no work opportunities for them.
Right.
So they unfortunately would stay on the mainland, and then their families were, and Hawaii is a place where the families are very, familiar. They really keep the family unit together.
Ohana.
Yeah, in the Ohana, and multi-generational, and it was quite sad to see kids leaving and not coming back, and it was really a lack of job opportunities.
Right.
So there was really there's no product development per se on the islands. There's no home brands that have really built up and have large teams. Mm-hmm. So I said, Avery, why don't we do this together, and we'll also give back 10% of our profits back to the community. And so the way we set up our ownership of our company was 30% to Avery, 30% to me, 30% to our employees, and 10% to the community. So that's how we divvied up the pie from the very get-go of the company.
That's awesome.
And so we are in year 2. We just introduced our first home collection of bedding, bath, and beach, but we are mostly an interior design studio working throughout the islands with a few projects on the mainland. And we just did bedding, bath, and beach. So it's been fun.
I love it. And I love how all of your companies really incorporate a beach element. I think that's what speaks so much to me. Is that resonant for you? Are you a big fan of the beach?
Well,
try to bring that inside your own home?
Yeah. I mean, there's nothing better than a sunset at the beach.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more. So you also run a women's fund now. Tell our listeners about what you're doing in that space to give back to other women.
Yeah, so as I was suggesting earlier, that I think that the next big wave of unicorns, if you will, are positive impact companies that are for profit. And we are making investments in women founders. Our fund is called Empower Her. And we're doing it in a really creative, innovative way using philanthropic dollars. So through donor-advised funds as well as philanthropy, we are investing in these companies. And we are doing it through an organization called Catacap. They are like a crowdsourcing platform that allows people to use their donor-advised funds and philanthropic monies to invest in for-profit companies. And all of the money that's made on these investments goes back into your philanthropy. So it just grows your ability to be more philanthropic.
I love that. Any initial companies you can mention for our listeners?
Absolutely. So we've just made investments in Super Circle, which is a circularity platform for apparel not going into landfills, so large brands. So they're doing like a circularity program. We're investing in Baby Quip, which is an amazing company and somebody you should have on your podcast. Actually, all these women you should have on your podcast. But Baby Quip actually is a way to rent baby gear when you're on the road, whether it's a stroller or a car seat.
That's what we do in Hawaii. That is, yes I need
and
to have all these women on the show.
And so the women are making somewhere around $1,800 a month renting out their baby gear. And so it's very much a peer-to-peer model marketplace.
Love that.
And we're investing in EverNow, which is a perimenopause, menopause telemedicine.
I love that. I love that there's so much more support coming in the dark void of women's health around midlife or so.
There's some very amazing entrepreneurs out there right now.
That's incredible. I love all those companies. I'm going to check them out. And one last note to leave our listeners with, maybe women who are debating capitalizing on an idea, harnessing their superpower. I love this quote that you said, don't go out on your own and try to build something without adequate capital. That's a recipe for burnout. I think with your business background, it just precedes you. So for women on the line, just starting out, what numbers do you need to know? What signals do you need to find to know your idea is successful? Because it can be scary to launch your own thing. What would you tell those women?
I would say to have strong financial acumen around the table. If you don't have it yourself, have someone on your team or a partner that does. It's really, I think, what sets an entrepreneur up successful versus not successful is keeping money in the bank. Being able to raise capital, I think, is the number one way that companies are successful. You can have a mediocre idea and be able to raise capital, and if it's well executed, it could become a huge success. And you can have an amazing idea and undercapitalized and not have the ability to raise money and have it be a failure. So I think the ability to raise capital, the ability to self-fund if you are able to viability, I think is very important. Serena and I were able to self-fund because I was at Microsoft, but we were able to self-fund until we were already $7 million in revenue. And so when we went out for institutional round, it wasn't so difficult for us to raise money. We were a very proven concept, and we were on our way. So I feel like it's very important to be able to raise capital, but not be, I meet so many women that want to pick my brain, and they are burned out. And they're burned out because they haven't taken a salary for years. And they haven't been able to capitalize their business. And sometimes they don't even have a commercially like what we were talking about earlier about nonprofit versus for-profit.
Yeah.
You have to have a commercially viable business to raise capital from an investor who's trying to return on their money. Yeah.
So what advice do you give them when they're burnt out? Like, what do you tell them they need to clean up or know or do? Or
Well, I try to get them to really look at the business and figure out if it's commercially viable.
Yeah.
And begin to think about, are there partnerships that, make sense for them from a capital raising.
That have similar audiences.
Similar audiences.
To amplify what they're doing, to get them out on the map.
Yeah. But I mean, there's so many lessons. Serena and I started a very high-end baby bedding business. Our bedding was $500 a crib set. And had we done a business plan and figured out the accessible or addressable market for that, we would have never started our company.
That's what I'm so curious about. I have people being like, have you done a business plan? I'm like, no, I'm like reverse engineering it, more creative brain. So that is really refreshing to hear. You don't always need the business plan to be successful. I'm assuming with Avery Lilly, you went out with a mission of giving back to Hawaii, which is why you created that model. So having your mission at the core is important, but you can figure it out as you go.
We were definitely figuring it out as we go with Serena and Lily. And I don't think we would have started the business had we done a business plan on baby bedding. But we kept putting one foot in front of the other, and we kept figuring it out and expanding the view on it into this idea of a lifestyle brand. In terms of Avery Lilly, I started that business with the idea that it was going to be a small, lifestyle business.
Yeah.
And so we'll see if that stays that way.
I'm so happy to support it. My husband's going to be thrilled. That's his holiday gift. So how can our listeners find you? How else can we support all your fantastic endeavors?
Oh, wonderful. Well, the Avery Lilly is just averylilly.com. And obviously everything's linked up in my LinkedIn profile. The Empower Her initiative is also linked into my LinkedIn profile. And that one's very fun because we're also inviting all of our partners that come into our collective to listen to all the pitches of these fabulous women.
Amazing
businesses. Yeah, it's very cool.
I can't wait to check that out. I'm so grateful you came on the show, Lily. You inspire me. You're creating so many wonderful companies and inspiring a lot of women out there. So thank you.
Thank you.